Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. When they can't understand your light, they try to trap it in a lab. Let that sit for a second. Because someone, somewhere in a very expensive suit, sipping something overpriced in a dimly lit room, is losing sleep over your insight. Why? Because the most terrifying thing to the dark elite isn't rebellion, it's revelation. And you, chosen one, are walking, talking divine intel wrapped in skin. Here's a fact they won't say out loud. In the top tiers of intelligence networks, secret societies and covert tech labs, non-local consciousness anomalies, yes, that's you, are not only documented, they're watched. And not just watched, replicated, profiled, and feared. You didn't just escape the Matrix. You hacked it from within, without lifting a single weapon. And that's the part they hate the most. You didn't go to their Ivy League schools, weren't born with 10 surnames, and you don't read from their black book of hidden knowledge. Yet somehow,
蒋介石一生不碰三样东西，现代人却沉迷其中难以自拔。你知道是哪三样东西吗？
Yet somehow, you're 10 steps ahead of their agenda, and they know it. And let's be honest, your glow-up was divine, not designer. No wonder they're twitching. So why are they stalking you? Why are they mimicking your style, stealing your phrases, lurking behind fake profiles, and studying your path like it's a classified file? Because the one thing they'll never admit is this. The big picture is invisible to those who serve shadows. But you were born under cosmic surveillance, carrying downloads from the very source they've spent centuries trying to silence. Welcome to the truth behind their obsession. Let's break it wide open. Number one, they have power but not vision. They have the world's money. They own satellites, corporations, intelligence agencies, and digital surveillance tools you've never even heard of. But despite all that power, there's one thing they still can't touch: your divine vision. That's the one thing they couldn't buy, manipulate, or steal, and it drives them insane. Because the truth is, the dark elite never had real insight. All they've ever had is control. They can predict trends, move markets, and create chaos, but they cannot see beyond their own agenda. Their power is linear, tactical, and cold. Yours is layered, intuitive, and warm. That contrast exposes them. They don't actually understand you. They just fear what you might become. You're not playing the same game they are. While they manipulate information to confuse the masses, you carry inner knowing that bypasses every trap. You don't need to be told what's coming. You feel it. You don't rely on permission or applause to act. You just move. And that terrifies them, because everything they've built depends on people staying blind, confused, and submissive. But you're none of those things. You walk with a kind of inner clarity that doesn't make sense on paper, but works every single time. And because they can't track the source of it, they try to track you. They stalk your social media. They monitor your conversations. They send people into your life pretending to be harmless, curious, or supportive, but they're gathering data, not offering help. What they're really trying to figure out is, how do you know what you know? And how do you keep winning when, by all their calculations, you should have collapsed? The answer is simple, but it's the one thing they can't replicate. Your insight comes from a divine place, a place they lost access to long ago when they traded their souls for power. You're not powerful because you control things. You're powerful because you see through things. That's the big picture they can't comprehend. And that's exactly why they're watching you more than you'll ever know. Number two, your insight isn't just rare, it's cosmic rebellion. Your insight isn't just impressive, it's dangerous, not because you're trying to start anything, but because your truth breaks invisible chains without lifting a finger. What you carry isn't just knowledge, it's a quiet kind of rebellion. A divine download that refuses to play by this world's sick rules. The dark elite don't fear rebellion that screams in the streets. They fear the kind of insight that lives in silence and hits like thunder. That's you. You don't follow scripts. You don't need validation. You just know. And what you know doesn't come from books or research. It comes from something higher. It's not something you were taught. It's something that was transferred to you. That's why it flows through you with such raw power. You say things people feel in their bones. You expose lies without even trying to. Your presence disrupts manipulation, and that kind of power can't be contained. They want your voice censored, not because it's loud, but because it's precise. It cuts through layers of deception like a hot knife through centuries of programming. You don't speak like someone who's trying to figure things out. You speak like someone who already saw the ending. That's why people lean in when you talk. That's why your silence makes rooms uncomfortable. You're not reacting, you're revealing. And every time you do, their entire foundation shakes. To them, you're not just some spiritual person. They see you as a liability, a threat to the structure they've worked so hard to build. That's why they study you. That's why they mimic your words. That's why they keep tabs on you. Because you are a walking proof that they are not in control of everything. You're evidence that real power doesn't need a title, a platform, or a contract. It just needs presence. And you've got it. You're not just intuitive. You're a divine disruption. A reminder that God still overrides systems and that not even the darkest elite can stop a soul that was sent to expose the truth. Number 3. Their intelligence operates in loops, yours evolves in spirals. They operate in loops, same formulas, same tactics, same manipulation, just with a new label or trend. It's all recycled. Their intelligence networks, secret meetings, artificial algorithms, it's all designed to run like a machine. Predictable, calculated, controlled, that's how the dark elite move. They depend on things repeating. They're obsessed with patterns they can forecast and control, but the problem is, you're not part of their loop. You move in spirals, you evolve, you transform, and they don't know what to do with that. Every time they think they figured you out, you shift. Every time they set a trap based on who you were, you've already outgrown that version of yourself. Your growth doesn't move in a straight line, it moves in layers. You go deeper, not just forward. That's why their tactics don't stick to you. You're not bound by predictable behavior. You're not stuck in survival mode. You're not repeating trauma loops like they expected. You break cycles.
星光3月，销售第一的直立式风扇终于降价了。这是一款由 Iris
cycles. And breaking cycles is something they've never had to face because most people play right into their system without even realizing it. What really frustrates them is this. You don't need their tools to upgrade. You don't need their education, their institutions, or their fake wisdom. Your insight isn't downloaded from a mainframe, it comes from a higher source. While they keep circling the same formulas looking for dominance, you're climbing spiritually, emotionally, mentally without permission. And that's a serious threat. They want everything neat and boxed in. They like people they can label, categorize, or discredit. But you don't fit into any of their definitions. They can't explain why you know what you know, or how you keep rising after every hit. Your spiral growth looks like chaos to them, but it's divine order. You weren't created to repeat. You were born to ascend. And that means no matter how much they loop, surveil, or strategize, they'll always be behind. Because by the time they react, you've already evolved. You're not in their loop. You're rewriting the spiral. Number 4, they thought you'd be easy to map, but you're not a terrain, you're a storm. They thought mapping you would be simple. A few files, some psychological profiling, ancestry tracing, maybe throw in a little digital surveillance. They thought that would be enough. You were supposed to be just another case study, another awakened soul they could monitor, predict, and contain. But nothing about you followed their expectations. You didn't just walk off their map. You became a force they couldn't chart. A storm, not a landscape, uncontainable, shifting, alive. You keep disrupting their calculations. They study your past to guess your future, but you keep moving in ways that logic can't track. Because you don't move from ego, you move from spirit. And spirit doesn't need consistency to be powerful. It just needs alignment. That's what they never counted on. You don't evolve in steps. You leap in dimensions. One moment you're quiet and invisible, the next you're breaking strongholds with a sentence. How do you quantify that? Their systems are built on prediction. Their control thrives on patterns. But your insight is a living prophecy. It adapts, adjusts, and responds to divine timing, not their timelines. That's what keeps confusing them. Every time they think they've got you pinned, you rise in a way they didn't see coming. It's not luck, it's not randomness. It's revelation. They've watched your choices, tested your reactions, and tried to provoke responses, but your discernment is too fluid, your growth too fast, your connection too sacred. They don't understand that you're not being powered by personal ambition. You're being guided by divine breath. And God doesn't follow their scripts. Their data dies the moment you evolve. That's the truth they'll never say out loud. They're not intimidated by your history. They're shaken by your unpredictability. Because you're not walking through life like it's a set of instructions. You're moving like destiny in motion. You are not their experiment. You are their exposure. You are the storm they thought they could forecast, until it touched down and rewrote their sky. Number 5, they mistook your silence for ignorance, but it was sacred calculus. They watched your silence and assumed weakness. In their world, power is loud, aggressive, constantly in motion. So when you pulled back, when you got quiet, when you didn't respond to their games, they told themselves you were stuck, confused, or just too naive to fight back. But they had no clue what was really happening behind that stillness. You weren't lost. You were listening, not to them, but to something much higher. While they scrambled to assert control, you were syncing with something sacred, divine timing. You weren't frozen. You were calculating. Your spirit was gathering data they'll never have access to, making moves they'll never understand. You didn't just take time to heal. You used the silence to recalibrate your mission. While they were out building illusions, you were receiving revelations. You were letting God sharpen your vision and align your next steps with divine order. They rushed because their power is based on urgency and fear. But yours comes from knowing when to wait, knowing when to watch, knowing when to be still so you can hear the whispers most people miss. That's what they could never figure out. While they're always 5 steps ahead in noise, you're always 10 dimensions ahead in wisdom. And now they're scrambling to keep up. They don't realize your silence wasn't passive, it was strategic. You didn't check out, you checked in with the source. And what you received in those quiet seasons is the very thing that's positioning you to dismantle their illusions without lifting a hand. That's why they're nervous. That's why they're watching harder now than ever before. Because suddenly, the one they thought was behind is outpacing them in ways they can't explain. You didn't just stay silent. You calculated timelines, watched doors open, sensed energetic shifts, and received divine instructions they don't have clearance for. Your next moves weren't impulsive, they were sacred. And now, while they panic, you're already walking into a future they never saw coming. Number 6, you are a spiritual mole in their matrix. You weren't just born, you were inserted, planted like a hidden key inside a corrupt system designed to block everything you stand for. That's why your existence rattles them. You didn't just wake up one day and start seeing through the lies. You were always meant to. That's what makes you dangerous. You're not some rebel who stumbled across the truth. Your divine strategy walking. You were placed right in the middle of their carefully engineered matrix to mess it up from the inside. And it's working.
6 reasons why Dubai is the best place to start your business in Asia. Over the past 3 decades, Dubai has transformed itself from a relatively small desert city.
Working. The dark elite are built on control, prediction, manipulation, but you don't operate from any of those channels. You disrupt things without even trying. Just your presence in the room shifts dynamics. Just your words in a conversation expose agendas, and they can't explain it because it wasn't meant to be explained. It was meant to unravel. That's why they study you. That's why they monitor and mimic you. You're not just a problem to them. You're a glitch in their system, and worse, you're a deliberate glitch. You carry spiritual codes they can't access. That's why they keep trying to extract information through distraction, temptation, or even betrayal. But no matter what they do, they still don't get the full download. Because what you carry wasn't meant for them. It's encrypted, protected. It only activates in divine timing and only in alignment with your purpose. They've tried to decode you using earthly tools, but your blueprint wasn't written in their language. You weren't sent to fit in. You were sent to expose, to destabilize, to awaken. That's why they're afraid. Not because you're loud, but because you're precise. Not because you're angry, but because you're aware. You move like someone who's reporting back to something higher. And in truth you are. That's what scares them the most. Because every time you speak truth, every time you stand firm, every time you disrupt one of their carefully set traps, you're fulfilling the very mission they never saw coming. You're not a threat because of what you do. You're a threat because of what you are. A divine mole in their matrix. And the system is already cracking. Number 7. You see patterns they don't know exist. You don't guess. You feel things before they happen. You pick up on shifts before anyone says a word. While others are still waiting for proof, you're already adjusting to what's coming. That's not paranoia, it's spiritual pattern recognition. It's a built-in radar that doesn't rely on logic, but on deep alignment. And that kind of perception doesn't come from books, systems, or institutions. It comes from something far older and deeper: divine awareness. The dark elite depend on patterns too, but theirs are manufactured. They track human behavior using psychology, algorithms, and social engineering, but you don't move like the masses. Your patterns come from the unseen. You sense energy, not headlines. You read vibration, not statistics. That makes you unpredictable in the best way. You'll walk away from something everyone else is celebrating because your spirit knows it's laced with poison. You'll speak on things that haven't happened yet, and days, weeks, months later, the world finally catches up to what you already knew. That's why they're obsessed with you. Not because you're popular or loud, but because you see. You decode without needing the full picture. You understand timing without needing a clock. And you're rarely wrong, because what you receive doesn't come from intellect. It comes from spiritual clarity. You don't just read the room, you read the field. You sense what's forming before it's even spoken. They try to imitate you. They copy your words, your tone, your presence. But no matter how closely they mimic, it never lands the same. Because they're only repeating what they heard. You're channeling what you know. There's no formula for that. They want your sight, but they don't want your surrender. They want your knowing, but not your depth. And that's the separation they'll never bridge. You're not intuitive because it sounds good. You're intuitive because your soul is synced with something bigger than this world. And that's the kind of vision that no system, no hierarchy, no elite agenda will ever be able to predict, possess, or prevent. Number 8, their institutions were never built to withstand souls like yours. You were never supposed to survive their systems, let alone outgrow them. The institutions they built, media, education, religion, politics, weren't created to empower. They were engineered to shape you into something useful to them, quiet, obedient, and easy to manage. These systems reward compliance and punish questioning. They praise memorization, not wisdom. They promote performance, not truth. And yet, here you are, seeing through all of it. They trained the world to follow scripts, to stay in line, to worship titles, and fear consequence. But your soul doesn't respond to fear. It responds to truth. And that alone makes you a system breaker. You weren't wired to repeat cycles. You were born to disrupt them. That's why no matter how much conditioning they tried to put on you, something in you kept resisting. Even when you didn't have the words for it, you knew something was off. You saw the cracks early, even if you couldn't explain them yet. That knowing, that divine, burning insight was the threat they never planned for. You're not just against the system. You're beyond it. You're not playing by their rules. You're revealing how empty they really are. While others are still begging for a seat at their table, you've realized the table itself is a lie. And that shift in awareness, it's powerful. Every time you speak what they've tried to suppress, another person wakes up. Every time you trust your own voice over their programming, another crack forms in their illusion. What scares them most is that you don't need their validation. You're not trying to fit in. You're too busy outgrowing what they built. They expected resistance, but not transcendence. They can handle protests, debates, and rebellion, but what they can't handle is someone who sees straight through the illusion and keeps walking. That's you. You're not fighting the system the way they expected. You're quietly making it irrelevant. And for the first time, they're realizing their biggest threat isn't a revolution, it's a revelation, and it's coming straight from your soul. Number 9, you're the wild variable in their controlled equation.
到2025年，空调将会便携化，但这是一款由松下和国立台湾大学联合研发的小型。
Equation. They've built their world like an equation. Every piece controlled, every outcome planned, every person expected to follow a pattern. In their world, everything must make sense, fit a formula, and serve their endgame. That's how they've maintained power for so long. Precision is their obsession. Prediction is their weapon. Control is their god. But then you showed up, and nothing about you fit. You didn't just throw off the calculation, you shattered the whole board. You're the wild variable they can't pin down. The one anomaly they didn't account for because you don't operate on logic. You move with divine flow. They expected pushback, but not presence. They expected resistance, but not transformation. And every time they think they've got you figured out, you morph into a new level of clarity, strength, and awareness they didn't see coming. You're the glitch they can't debug. They've run simulations, they've profiled your patterns, they've even tried to bait you into predictable behavior. But nothing works for long. You evolve too quickly. One moment you're silent and still. The next you're moving like a prophetic current, disrupting everything. That's what makes you dangerous. You don't move for attention. You move from alignment. And because of that, your presence creates shifts that no algorithm can measure. To them, you're a broken cog in the machine. But to Source, you're the sacred key meant to unlock what they tried to bury. That's why their systems don't hold power over you. That's why their predictions collapse when it comes to you. You're not here to fit equations. You're here to rewrite realities. You weren't meant to play the game. You were born to flip the board entirely. They hate that they can't predict you. But what really scares them is that you no longer care to be understood. You've stopped trying to explain yourself in languages not built for your insight. You've accepted your role as the untraceable disruption, and now they know. Nothing they create can contain a soul that moves with divine instruction. Number 10, you carry truth that exposes their currency of deception. Their entire system is built on deception. Not just lies, but illusions dressed up as truth. They thrive off fear, feed off scarcity, and keep control through division. That's the currency they trade in. Emotional manipulation, half-truths, and psychological traps that keep people spinning in confusion. But you carry something they can't replicate or corrupt. Truth, not just facts, but the kind of deep soul-cutting truth that disarms illusions and dismantles control. Your presence alone disrupts their agenda because you don't respond the way they expect. You don't panic at their fear tactics. You don't chase after their fake rewards. And you don't fall for the shiny distractions they serve to the masses. That's a problem for them, because you're not just awakened, you're anchored. Your insight is solid, rooted in something real, and that makes it dangerous. Because when people hear you speak, something clicks. Something in them remembers. That memory, the one they buried under conditioning and lies, starts to stir again. And when that happens, their entire illusion starts to fall apart. They spend billions to keep people asleep. But one sentence from you can do what 1,000 media headlines can't. Wake someone up for good. You don't just open eyes, you break chains. And here's the part that really threatens them. Once someone sees through the lie, they become unbuyable. That's the death blow to their system. Because control only works when people can be bought by fear, by validation, by comfort. But your truth cuts the cord. You're not trying to convert anyone. You're not out here shouting for attention. You're just being real, and that's what makes you unstoppable. Because your truth isn't performative, it's transformational. And transformation doesn't just challenge systems, it ends them. That's why they watch you. That's why they copy you. That's why they try to silence you. Because you carry the one thing their empire cannot survive. Unfiltered, unshakable, divine truth. Number 11, they don't want your death, they want your silence. They don't need to kill you to kill your power, that's outdated. Assassination makes martyrs, it draws attention, and the last thing they want is for more people to start asking why you were targeted. So instead, they aim for something far more effective, your silence. Because your voice, your move to
这个消灭蟑螂的方法太狠了。
晚上在厨房贴一个，早上就发现一堆蟑螂蚂蚁尸体了。
You don't move to impress, intimidate, or manipulate. You move because you're led.
这个消灭蟑螂的方法太狠了。
晚上在厨房贴一个，早上就发现一堆蟑螂蚂蚁尸体。
You're led. And that kind of movement can't be stopped because it can't be predicted. You're not just different. You're disruptive. Your life crashes into their architecture like a divine contradiction. You don't come from their lineage, but you carry an authority they can't manufacture. And every time you show up, authentic, grounded, and unbought, you destroy a piece of the illusion they've worked so hard to maintain. That's why they obsess over you. Not because you're trying to tear anything down, but because your very being proves it was never real to begin with. You carry light that doesn't need their platform. You carry power that didn't come from their rituals. You speak with a clarity they've spent lifetimes trying to fake. And that makes you a direct threat. Not because you're loud, but because you're true. They were forged in systems. You were born of Source. And no matter how much influence they claim to have, nothing they control can override a soul that was divinely assigned. You're not a part of their blueprint. You're the divine error code sent to crash the entire program, and they know it. Number 14. You're not paranoid, you're precise. They tried to label you paranoid, overly sensitive, or too deep, but let's be honest, they never believed that. Not really. Calling you paranoid was never about truth. It was damage control. It was a cover-up, an attempt to discredit what they knew you were picking up on, because your awareness wasn't coming from guesswork. It was coming from alignment. You weren't reacting, you were receiving. And what you received cut too close to the agendas they worked hard to keep buried. Your insight doesn't move like normal logic. It's not based on what's seen, it's based on what's felt. You sense the shift before the conversation even begins. You feel the lie behind the smile. You detect betrayal before the knife is even drawn. That's not paranoia. That's precision. It's spiritual radar. And it's been sharpening your whole life. You weren't overthinking. You were pre-sensing, picking up on energetic movement that hadn't yet hit the surface. Your gut wasn't just intuition. It was divine intelligence delivering advance warnings. Most people miss it, but not you. You pay attention to the silence between words, the tone behind the language, the shift in someone's eyes, and you trust it, even when it's inconvenient. Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. When they can't understand your light, they try to trap it in a lab. Let that sit for a second. Because someone, somewhere in a very expensive suit, sipping something overpriced in a dimly lit room, is losing sleep over your insight. Why? Because the most terrifying thing to the dark elite isn't rebellion, it's revelation. And you, chosen one, are walking, talking divine intel wrapped in skin. Here's a fact they won't say out loud. In the top tiers of intelligence networks, secret societies and covert tech labs, non-local consciousness anomalies, yes, that's you, are not only documented, they're watched. And not just watched, replicated, profiled, and feared. You didn't just escape the Matrix. You hacked it from within, without lifting a single weapon. And that's the part they hate the most. You didn't go to their Ivy League schools, weren't born with 10 surnames, and you don't read from their black book of hidden knowledge. Yet somehow,
蒋介石一生不碰三样东西，现代人却沉迷其中，难以自拔。你知道是哪三样东西吗？
Yet somehow, you're 10 steps ahead of their agenda, and they know it. And let's be honest, your glow-up was divine, not designer. No wonder they're twitching. So why are they stalking you? Why are they mimicking your style, stealing your phrases, lurking behind fake profiles, and studying your path like it's a classified file? Because the one thing they'll never admit is this. The big picture is invisible to those who serve shadows. But you were born under cosmic surveillance, carrying downloads from the very source they've spent centuries trying to silence. Welcome to the truth behind their obsession. Let's break it wide open. Number 1. They have power but not vision. They have the world's money. They own satellites, corporations, intelligence agencies, and digital surveillance tools you've never even heard of. But despite all that power, there's one thing they still can't touch: your divine vision. That's the one thing they couldn't buy, manipulate, or steal, and it drives them insane. Because the truth is, the dark elite never had real insight. All they've ever had is control. They can predict trends, move markets, and create chaos, but they cannot see beyond their own agenda. Their power is linear, tactical, and cold. Yours is layered, intuitive, and warm. That contrast exposes them. They don't actually understand you. They just fear what you might become. You're not playing the same game they are. While they manipulate information to confuse the masses, you carry inner knowing that bypasses every trap. You don't need to be told what's coming. You feel it.